Hi, David. Hi. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Well, firstly, David, let me start by saying that we shouldn't isolate tourism, because tourism from China is just the beginning of a relationship with Chinese people, which results in many other areas. It results in students, results in investment, it results in retail opportunities. It creates a whole value chain of opportunity. So I think it's dangerous. Sorry, not dangerous. I'm anxious to be sure that when we're talking about tourism, we're talking about a kind of ecosystem that sits underneath it. And tourism is kind of the entry point, but it can then lead to so many other things. And there's actually a great report I'll send you, which has a whole lot of stats in it, which I won't bore you with now, about how a tourist becomes, ends up contributing to a whole range of our different parts of our economy. And so I'm anxious that we don't sort of think of tourism as sort of whale watching and Ayers Rock, and yeah. Yeah, and when you say to people, I think a big opportunity is tourism, they kind of roll their eyes and say, "Well, that's we're a proper business. We're not we're not focused on that." And to me, that it's the start of a whole range of other things. So yeah, that's the first thing I have to say. The second thing to say is that obviously we're seeing record numbers of tourists from mainland China, and that's only going to grow. There's something like 100 million Chinese on the move, and we're getting about 1 million here, which is actually quite low if you think about it, because we should be at least getting 2 or 3%, just in line with our GDP, and so we still have a long way to go, I think, to attract the tourists and to give them a good experience so they keep coming back and they tell all their friends that Australia is the place to go. And I don't feel we've really tackled that as a country yet. So as a result, I think we're sort of punching below our weight on this, even though I think we're all celebrating these amazing numbers. But I think we're, if you went to parts of Europe at the moment, you'd be amazed at how many Chinese tourists are there. Well, it's a dangerous thing to say because everyone's crowing about the numbers, and of course, 1 million is a great number, and they're talking about 3 million in the next decade or so, which is all great, and these are record numbers. But I think yes, if you look at it globally, we're probably slightly underperforming. Yeah. Well, I think we're about 1%. Yeah, 1%. I think we should be at least 3%. And really, if you think about it, you could argue that we should be 5% or more because, we're in the same region, we're in the same sort of time zone, there's many different flights to Australia from China. There's many ways for them to get here. So in theory, we should be probably overperforming, not underperforming. I don't think we're really delivering an experience to the Chinese. And one of the things that I'm always shocked about is how Anglo we are. And what I mean by that is there's a recent report that said that something like 74% of our C-level executives and boards are Anglo-Celtic. And if you then include Europe, it gets you to 94%. So there's that, and then I think there's 1% Aboriginal, so that leaves about 5%, which are non-Anglo stroke European. So if you think about that, it just, to me, that's just the sort of tip of the iceberg when you just sort of think about that and how that then flows down to every part of our society. It basically means that as a Chinese person turning up in Australia, you're in a very foreign environment. Where people don't speak Chinese, where people don't have Chinese faces, and where you turn on the news and you see white, blonde, news presenters. Not that I'm not complaining about white blondes, but I just think that we're a sort of mono culture in some ways. despite our sort of multicultural society, and there's large percentages of our population that are from other countries, and especially from Asia, but that doesn't actually that's not in your face. It's sort of under the surface, under the radar. And I think in order to present a China or Asia-friendly tourist experience, we need to present an Asian face. Whereas we generally don't. We're still promoting, Paul Hogan type images of Australia. Well, it's still kangaroos and koalas and sun-drenched beaches and all that, which is all great. We have lots of natural advantages, but I think that the key to attracting tourists, if we want more tourists, is to present more of an Asia face. It starts at the very top, doesn't it? We need to change corporate Australia to start looking a bit more Asian. We've got to, I think, influence middle Australia. And I mean, the way I see Australia in a corporate sense is we've got the big corporates who are all kind of engaged in Asia, the Telstras and the BHPs and the banks. And we've got the micro sector, the entrepreneurs are all sort of trying to get into Asia. But there's this whole middle Australia, I call it, which is the mid-sized businesses who are generally domestically focused, who are, have enjoyed 20-something years of uninterrupted economic growth, and who don't feel particularly threatened by Asia, and don't particularly embrace the risk and the cultural changes that they're going to have to take to do business in Asia, and are quite happily just sort of jogging along at 8% growth and delivering returns for their shareholders, and don't actually see the need to do very much. And that's probably our biggest challenge, is to engage that group. And I think tourism, and when I say tourism, I mean inbound activity, is probably the best way to engage them, because the tourists throw up opportunities across many sectors, which generally is now determined by middle Australia. David, I'll just tell you this little example. You know what Daigou means, don't you? Yeah, no? Oh, okay. Well, Daigou is a kind of Australian thing that's grown off the back of Chinese people in Australia buying up products, particularly milk powders and stuff, and sending it back to their families in China, and obviously making a little clip on the way. And that started off as this kind of little informal thing where they went to Chemist Warehouse and bought up, Blackmore's health supplements and put them in boxes and sent them to China. And now it's actually a multi-million-dollar industry. There's 50,000 of them, and it's growing quite fast. And it's becoming a whole new channel for people to sell their product into China through the Daigous. So if you've got a skin cream or something and you want to test the China market, rather than go to all the cost of going to China, you could actually start selling it to the Daigous. And if they like it, then that could be your springboard into China. Now, to me, the Daigous is a good example of the danger to us of being too complacent, because in theory, if they're bringing the market with them, which they are, then there's nothing to stop them selling everything else as well. Like, for example, properties. For example, tourism experiences. For example, places in universities. And before long, they'll displace the Australian businesses that are in those areas, because they're more in tune with the needs of the ultimate customer, who is Chinese speaking and looking for help. No, they're still selling milk powders and health supplements, and because they're quite entrepreneurial, these people, I don't think it'll be very long before they start thinking, oh, we've got 20,000 loyal customers who want to buy Australian products through us, so why don't we sell them some other things, like holidays, like properties, like university places, and what will happen is we'll end up with a kind of China business in Australia, which will start to displace and compete with our existing businesses. Yeah. For tourists, well, I think the tourists that we want are not the the middle class, lower to middle class people. It's the upper class people, upper middle class. So the people that have got the money, and there's 1 billion people in China over. We only want 5% of them, and that's the upper middle class, if not millionaires and billionaires. And so we can deliver a premium experience in Australia to a small number of people. And in fact, we probably shouldn't try and compete at the mass end because we can't cope. Like, imagine, hundreds of millions of people coming through our ports and airports. I mean, we can't cope anyway without increasing the numbers. Yeah. Yeah, sure. David, I'll send you this report because there's lots in there that I think you can use. Yeah, it's very good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, no problem. Cheers. Bye. Bye.